This is the Athletic FC podcast weekend preview as the Premier League returns with a matchday 30 bang. Hello, I'm Michael Bailey. Alongside me for this one, we have Jay Harris. Hello, Jay.
Hey, you all good?
Yeah, good, thank you. Have you got a highlight of the international break? I know no one likes the international break, but I want something positive.
No. Watching Kobbie Mainoo play for England, I've not had the opportunity to actually watch him that much this season. So watching him in that environment for the first time, I was very impressed.
Beautifully put. There's a Athletic FC podcast on that subject as well. People should listen to that. Nnamdi Onyeagwara is here.
How you doing?
I'm good, Nnamdi. How are you?
I'm very well, thank you.
How about your highlight of the international break?
No, I think Wirtz and Baumgartner scoring 6-7 seconds into their games are quite interesting, but can't overlook Rice captaining England for the first time. I think that was very interesting.
Lovely stuff. Jon Mackenzie's here too. Hey, John.
Hello.
Have you got a highlight?
It ended.
Let's do a fixture formation because the domestic football is back. And it is all a bit park the bus this week with an 8-2-0. Blimey. We have got a stacked Saturday. It begins with Newcastle hosting West Ham in the early kickoff, followed by Bournemouth Everton, Chelsea Burnley, Forest Palace, Sheffield United Fulham. What a treat these all are. And Spurs Luton. They are all at 3 p.m. At 5:30, we've got a tasty Midlands derby with Villa against Wolves. And we do then have a bonus Saturday fixture. It doesn't end there. We've got Manchester United at Brentford come 8 p.m. As for the Sunday, it's all about the title races. Liverpool host Brighton at 2, followed by Manchester City against Arsenal from 4:30 at the Etihad. And that is where we'll begin. So I think we need a reminder, don't we? So Arsenal currently sit top of the league. They're level on points with Liverpool, but they've got a 7+ goal difference advantage. That's definitely a sentence. City are then 1 point behind the pair of them. Arsenal did win the reverse fixture over at the Emirates earlier in the season, but they have lost their last 12 against City. So, Jay, how much are we looking forward to this?
Yeah, really looking forward to it. It's obviously the crunch time of the season now. The run-in, I think they're calling it on Sky Sports. And it's just going to be perfect weekend, really. Easter bank holiday weekend. Arsenal beat Man City at 4:30 p.m. Primetime viewing. Obviously, there's a few injury doubts about a few players. John Stones, Kyle Walker, Gabriel Martinelli and a couple of others. And it'd be a real shame if those players aren't available. But regardless, I think it's going to be exciting.
Are we officially in the business end of the season? Are we going to say that now?
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah?
Yeah.
I'm good with that. You could discuss this really, Nnamdi, whether Arsenal actually have to win this game to stand a chance of winning the title and put that all that pressure on it. But do you sense that?
Not necessarily. I think this time last year when we played them, it was much more squeaky bum time, and it was much more we lose and it's over. Me personally, I've got to be honest, I'm not looking forward to this game as much as Jay is, even with all the bank holiday context around it. I think it's just, if you look at our last 5 results going to the Etihad, we've lost 4-1, 5-0, 1-0, 3-0, 3-1, 3-1. So it's not the most fun place to go.
That's
but
horrible.
It's not the most fun place to go. But I mean, yeah, I don't think if we lose, it's going to be over. There'll be a lot of games to play, a lot of time for slip-ups, and yeah, as long as it's not a damaging defeat with loads of injuries, then we'll see what happens.
I said like a true fan. There is interesting Arsenal context to this. I kind of like this, that whenever Arsenal have had a successful title win, they have actually gone and beaten their rivals on their own patch. They did it Anfield in 1989, obviously famously, Old Trafford in 98 and 2002. So is that something that is in the back of Arsenal fans' minds, that they have had that sort of past successes and it's propelled them?
I would think so. I think in the last couple of seasons, I think we've definitely been on a bit of a tear of, especially stadiums that we don't normally win at. We've not done too badly at. We've won at, we've beat Liverpool, and we've won at Everton. We've won at Spurs. We just kind of puts a couple records on its head. So I think if we can continue that going into the Etihad, I mean, we haven't won there since January 2015, and I think it was a Cazorla and Giroud goal that won us a game that day. So I don't think, it'll be too much in our minds, but yeah.
Arsenal have won 8 consecutive Premier League matches, John. The last time the Gunners won 9 in a row.
They won the league, presumably.
They did. It was the Invincibles. Not only did they win the league, they didn't lose a game, John, in 2004.
Well, I think that means that they're definitely going to win the league. There's no other conclusion we can draw from that.
Haven't done it yet. Where do you see this one going?
As a game. Yeah, it's a good question. I think this season has been really fascinating because it's the first time we've really had like a 3-way title challenge that's gone the distance. And it's each of the teams, I think, is interesting in their own right. So we've got Man City, who've definitely dropped off. I was looking at the underlying numbers. I was looking at Liverpool actually, but looking at City's underlying numbers, and their expected goal difference is expected to be under 40 for. This is the only time, apart from in the 2021 season, where they won the league anyway, but no one was really challenging. That was when Man United came second. Usually they've been up above 50s, pushing 60s. So this is they're worse at both ends. They're defensively not quite at the races. This is going to be the first time, I think, in the Pep Guardiola era that they're going to put up a lower XG figure than Liverpool have. So we're talking about a Manchester City who are fragile relative to what they've been in recent seasons. We've got Liverpool who have just turned around from last season and have just put up incredible numbers this season. So they're looking at like above 80 expected goals this season, which is massive. I think that's one of the biggest that they'll have had in the Jurgen Klopp era, apart from 21-22 when they finished a point behind Manchester City in that season as well. So this is like a Liverpool season who are firing really, really hot in terms of in front of goal. They're generating chances and they're riding that attacking prowess through the season. And then Arsenal at the other end, who are just absolutely just destroying defensive records as they do it as well. And yeah, for me, I think it's going to be fascinating, because I think if Arsenal do come through and win the league, doing it off the back of being actually primarily defensively solid, is that going to change the meta for Premier League going forward? And it was interesting actually looking through some of the previous seasons, because Man City were the seasons where they've done really well have been the seasons when they've been more defensively solid, and so there definitely is something there. And so yeah, maybe the old adage is true: defenses win you whatever it is, goals win your matches, defenses win your titles.
That's the one.
True,
Defense wins you championship.
Yeah, something like that. But yeah, so I think it's really fascinating, and between all of those three, it's really hard to see which way it goes. And yeah, I wouldn't go so far as to say if City win this weekend, that's it all tied up. I just don't think that's the case. Whereas I think if Arsenal win this weekend, I think it's a lot more ominous, because they'll have that buffer above City, so they've probably almost taken them out if they can continue the way that they're playing, and then it'll just come down to a sort of straight shootout with Liverpool. So yeah, I think it is going to influence the title race. It might not decide it, but it's definitely going to change the tenor of it.
It was really interesting with Arsenal and how they've evolved this season, because I feel like last season especially, they had several games later on in the season where they were already a couple of goals down early on and making silly mistakes, and also that's happened at Manchester City where they've been blown away. So the thing you kind of expect we'll get this weekend is that they will be solid and they'll give themselves a platform in the game. Whether that proves enough in the end is a different argument, but they will at least have that.
Yeah, I think the way Arsenal have their psychological development under Mikel Arteta has just been better and better every single season. You think about Arteta's first full season, Arsenal finished 8th. Following season, they finished 5th, and they came very close to getting into the top 4. But there were periods of that season where they were just wildly inconsistent. There were 2 separate occasions where they lost 3 games in a row. How do they respond? They respond by finishing 2nd. And by this time last year, Arsenal had already had the 3-2 victory over Bournemouth, where Reece Nelson scores that last-minute winner. The 4-2 over Aston Villa, where goes in off Martinez's head, was already so chaotic. So the fact that we're 9 games of the season left and everything feels so much more calmer, I think is a massive thing for Arteta and the players. I think also the fact that they're in the quarterfinals of the Champions League for the first time since 2009, 2010, I think that's massive for Arteta. I think it's massive for the players. I think it's massive for the club as a whole. So I think there's just such a good feeling around the club at the moment. And as John said, Arsenal's defensive record this season's been phenomenal. And when they beat Man City at the Emirates earlier in the season, I think City had their lowest amount of shots in a game since 2010. 4, and none of them were on target. So Arsenal's evolution physically and psychologically over the last few years, I mean, they're in the best position that they've been in to win this title. And
the personnel has changed as well, hasn't it, Nnamdi? We're going to have, compared to the game, the equivalent fixture last season, we've got Raya in goal, Kivior, Declan Rice, Kai Havertz as well. So what are those guys going to need to do? At the question here about whether they can be physically at it, I suppose, for what they're going to come up against Manchester City. But how can you see them? Because also, I mean, William Saliba missed the game last season as well.
Yeah, it's a really interesting point. There's some really interesting pieces on The Athletic about that as well. Aaron Katz and really wrote about it. Amy Lawrence has wrote about it as well, where we're just a bigger team, to put it bluntly. We're last season we went to the Etihad and we didn't have Saliba, we didn't have Tomiyasu, and of course we didn't have Rasa Havertz. They weren't at the club at the time. We did have Partey, Gabriel and White as well to add to that. So you would think that if you take the size and the strength of the team that we've got now, there was a bit of an ongoing discourse online about just seeing the size of our team, and sometimes we're winning games in the tunnel just because we're just big boys, and that's it. And so especially with Havertz in particular, who just adds a really different dimension to our team. Gabriel Jesus is brilliant, but there's just a way where City will of course come and try and press and camp in a half and do what they can to dictate the game. And with Kai Havertz, you just got an outlet where it's just, we've got Raya with his distribution, which can just go straight long to 6'4" German Havertz, who was very, very good at just touching it down and bringing in Saka, Martinelli if he's fit, fingers crossed, and Odegaard and that sort of lot into play. So, and especially with Havertz as well, I mean, he came on just in the win against City in October and got the game winning assist up front, and then he played in the Community Shield up front and was really good as well. So I do think that we're a very technical team, we're a very tactical team, but I do think if you just want to go brute strength with City, with Haaland and the likes of Ake, Kanji, Stones, Walker, if they play of course, but I do think it'll be a very physical game.
I'll tell you someone else who's a big boy. Rodri. He's a big boy. He also never loses football matches. Yeah. I mean, I say never. I mean, certainly in a 12-month period, but I can't think there are many footballers, professional senior footballers at the top of the game who haven't lost a game in 12 months. And of course, he missed the game at the Emirates, which is obviously therefore why Arsenal won that game. And I'm guessing he's fit, as far as to the best of my knowledge, to play this weekend.
Yeah, I haven't messaged him this morning yet, so I'm not entirely sure how he is. But yeah, I assume he'll be playing. But yeah, physicality has become we talked about metas before. It's become the new meta for the teams at the top of the Premier League. And Nnamdi referencing that 4-1 loss at the Etihad, I think that was a monumental moment for Mikel Arteta, because I think he recognised that in order to be able to challenge Manchester City, you have to be able to play some games as underdogs. And I think that's the Arsenal that we've got this season, right? They have the ability to not lose. And yes, we've had conversations all the way through the season about their abilities to subsequently win those games. But at the moment, they're just hard to break down. And being hard to break down was enough for them at the Emirates to then be able to, yes, maybe a bit of a fortunate goal, but they were still in the game at that point to then go on and win it. So that's the sort of game that we're talking about here now. Centre have been doing that last season. We were always talking about their unit of 5 at the back. John Stones pushing up alongside Rodri, and then their big centre backs in pretty much every position across the back line. Physicality is a massive thing, and yeah, you look at it now and you think Arsenal probably have the upper hand even over City now in terms of the physicality. But yeah, Rodri just an incredible footballer. For me, probably the best player in his position, which, it's not as though there aren't equally good defensive midfielders out there. I mean, Declan Rice will be playing on the other team. But with Rodri, what you get is just a super well-rounded profile, brilliant in and out of possession, metronomic, which is important for a team that is managed by Pep Guardiola. And it's no surprise that when they miss him, they often will drop points, because he controls the tempo, he controls the build-up, he allows the exciting players they have up front to do the things they do. So yeah, if you can find ways of either isolating Rodri or nullifying Rodri, then you're onto a winner. But yeah, that's what Arsenal will have to do the weekend.
Rodri has missed 4 games through suspension this season. City have lost every one of them. Not even drawn. Lost, Jay. It's remarkable. We look at City and I guess I feel like I've spent months talking about how inevitable they are and that they will get to this point. But is that just through the experience of what they've done, really, rather than... John has already listed off a load of reasons why maybe they're not quite the same team.
I think they've obviously just got that fear factor. They've got the experience. As I kind of mentioned earlier, Arsenal have gone on this really great development journey over the last few years, but still 20 years since they've won the title. Whereas obviously City have just been absolutely formidable under Guardiola. So I think they just know that when the going gets tough and the pressure is on, they do have that extra gear that they can click into. They've not been perfect this season, as John's outlined, but you've just heard Nnamdi at the beginning being like, as long as we don't get a damaging defeat, And I think that, I'm not trying to dig him out, but that kind of sums up the mentality that it just feels like Arsenal could go and get absolutely turned over at the Etihad. So I think, yes, Arsenal in a great position, Liverpool are too, but Man City, it's a little bit like the older brother. They just know how to pull it out sometimes.
Did you see the story about John Stones chatting to, was it Declan Rice, who said, then Declan Rice was like, big game at the weekend, and he was like, who have you got? He had no idea of what was going on. And I guess that counts for something, right? City have been in that situation every season pretty much under Pep, where they come into the final run to the end of the season and they have to produce wins in 2 of 3 different competitions. So.
Sorry, I was just going to say, I think the best way to kind of look at it is that if Man City lost, would we say that Man City are out of the title race? No. If Arsenal lost, I think the noise that would create would be quite damaging. It would definitely turn into Arsenal going to bottle it for the second season in a row. You can see it already.
Even 3rd season in a row, right? Because with the Champions League.
Exactly.
Right? Do you think there's any sense in which that could happen? If they lose, then you see that little bit of a wobble at the end of the season from Arsenal.
I mean, it could. I think it's very interesting when you take in, especially what I was saying earlier about coming into this game with different attitudes. I mean, City have just been there and done it, and you would bank your money on them. They've shown for years what sort of team they can be, and they're just ruthless. And we are a new team, but at the same time, like you said, it is coming on to the 3rd season that we're not a surprise package anymore. So I do think, and if you even look at this season, we've had our wobbles and we've had a 3-game losing period in January, come back from Dubai and we're absolutely flying. So I do think that it is a daunting place to go. It is a terrifying team to play at time, but also, I mean, we also put fear into teams as well, and I do think that City will also be approaching this game like you said, that, I mean, if we win, we're 4 points ahead, and like you said, that could rule them out, and so I think they'll be just as fearful as we are.
In terms of the teams and who will play, it does sound like Bukayo Saka, Gabriel and Gabriel Martinelli are all racing to be fit. Nnamdi, how that phrase, is that a confident phrase that they'll all play? Are you worried about that they won't? Who plays instead of them?
Saka won't miss the game, but yeah, fingers crossed.
Which leg will everyone kick? Want to kick? Jon Mackenzie, John Stones, and Carl
Give
Walker.
him all of the hits there, aren't you?
John Stones walked through the mixed zone at Wembley and was asked, how's the ankle feel? And he's like, I don't know yet. I don't think that's the impression.
Gary Neville was there.
Yeah, basically. Who would be the bigger miss? Would they be big misses? Can they?
John Stones, yeah, absolutely a big miss.
I was like, John Stones still, even I know he does great things, but he still looks like a centre-back playing in midfield to me when he does.
I mean, I don't know. I watch John Stones do what he does, and I just don't think there's anyone else in the world who can play that role as a centre-back in the way that he does. And it is remarkable, and I talk about it way too much, so I should probably stop talking about it. Yeah.
And Kyle Walker, I mean, they would be misses, wouldn't they, to this Man City?
Yeah, I mean, the Kyle Walker thing is interesting because City have been forced to play slightly different structurally this season in such a way that they end up using Kyle Walker, and then they've used Josko Gvardiol on the other side to provide width. And I think it limits them quite a bit because, in previous seasons we've been talking about, players like Riyad Mahrez and Jack Grealish being the width providers for that team. And there's just so much more creativity there when you've got players of that kind of calibre, when you're then dropping down to Kyle Walker, who is getting on a little bit now and has always been quite a functional fullback in many respects. And then Josko Gvardiol, who's a centre-back playing pretty much as getting into scenarios where you're expected to provide chances from. So, yeah, I think whether or not the loss of Kyle Walker really means they have to play this system differently, I'm not sure how Pep will go about doing it, but the width is going to have to come from somewhere, and there's not a huge amount of options that they have to play, outside centre-backs who can also play as full-backs too. So Walker will be missed in that respect, but maybe it just means that there'll be a structural change which actually works out better for City. I guess we'll just have to wait and see.
Fascinating stuff. Okay, it's predictions time. I'll go around from my right, I reckon. Jay, what do you reckon?
1-1.
That's what I was going to say. That's fine. Great prediction. Nnamdi?
Man City 1, Arsenal 2.
I knew it.
There you are, damaging defeat, and you still said...
There you go.
Yeah, I mean, a draw sounds fun, doesn't it? It sounds likely. I think a 1-1 is a good shout from Jay. It feels as though City have done that quite a lot in recent games, right? Where they'll have one good half and then maybe it'll get ground out and they'll concede later on. So I'll go with that 1-1.
Excellent stuff. Well, before we move on, it's such a big game. It deserves its own trivia slot. Yes, it's our Manchester City Arsenal trivia. It's back to a familiar format, although I am not familiar with it, but that's fine. How many players can you guys name who have made at least one Premier League appearance for Manchester City and Arsenal? So there are 12 of them. And I'm going to start with you, Jay. Who do you think?
Bakary Sagna.
Correct. Nnamdi. Yes, Nnamdi.
Gael Clichy.
Yes, also correct. John. This is a good start.
Sammy Nasri.
Correct. Well done. 3 out of 3 so far. Jay.
Adebayor.
Is correct. Well done. Nnamdi.
Alexander Zinchenko.
Yes. Is this too easy? We'll soon find out. I'm not giving you any of the context because, you know the periods. John.
Gabriel Jesus.
Yes. Everyone's on 2 apiece. Jay.
Someone called Eddie McGoldrick from a long time ago. Used to play for Nuneaton United, Kettering Town. Oh!
Wrong, because he didn't play in the Premier League.
Wow.
Oh!
Sorry, Jay. Move on.
I was trying to cheat, I won't lie. It's backfired.
Nnamdi.
Kolo Toure.
Yes, well done. Great work. John. I'm going to have to hurry you.
Yeah, I'm gonna bow out.
He's bowing out or he's passing? He's passing. Jay, any more?
No, I think I deserve to hang my head in shame after what I just did.
Well, shall we declare Nnamdi the winner then?
Yeah.
Yes, well done, Nnamdi. Round of applause.
Fair winner.
Brilliant.
Excellent work.
That's good because I was out as well.
The ones that were not well, the list here: Paul Dickoff, David Seaman, Patrick Vieira, Nicolas Anelka.
Patrick Vieira, we should have got. Oh, I was going to say Anelka.
You didn't though,
Did I
did you?
not say Anelka?
Silvinho, and I think you got the other ones. So well done, you guys. Right, next up, we turn our attention to Anfield. While we spent all that time talking about Arsenal and Manchester City, we should probably reflect a little bit on Liverpool and what they've got ahead of them. And Brighton, they've proven difficult opponents for them of late. They've only beaten Albion once in their last 7 games against them, John, which is quite something. Obviously, they'll be wanting to avoid slips at this stage of the season, so this is probably not the ideal. What do you reckon then? Klopp versus De Zerbi?
Yeah, fun. I think that but both of these managers have very notable play styles that are a little bit outside what you might expect. And De Zerbi, a lot of his play style is designed around baiting presses high, and Liverpool like to press high. So it'll be fun to see what we get at the weekend, I think.
I mean, this whole run isn't obviously down to De Zerbi against Klopp, but is it just coincidental that Brighton have such a decent run against Liverpool and they've made life difficult for them?
But I think the play style, I think it probably works if you can get them to jump up on you and then you can hit the space in behind. Then Liverpool are the sort of perfect foil to the sort of tactics they're playing. Like what Brighton have found is that the teams they struggle against, the teams who are happy to just sit back and be like, we're not going to even engage with your press. Possess the ball, move up the field, break us down, and that's where they have problems. That's not going to happen when you play against Liverpool. So, I think that this is sort of play style matchup which really favours Brighton.
Should De Zerbi be someone Liverpool are contemplating to replace Jurgen Klopp next season?
Yeah, potentially. As John said, there's very different styles of play, so there'd definitely be a question mark as to would De Zerbi work with the players that are currently at Liverpool? Would he require quite a substantial amount of investment? De Zerbi's behaviour sometimes is really, I think it was only a couple of months ago that he was moaning about Brighton not signing a certain amount of players in the January transfer window, and I just think when the scrutiny would be on him even more at a big 6 side, I do wonder how he'd kind of cope with that, because he does tend to, I've been at games where he's going absolutely mad on the touchline. But no, I really enjoy watching Brighton play. Obviously done it a couple of times live in the flesh when they played Brentford, and it is mesmerising football. I have no idea what they're doing, to be honest. But it's enjoyable to watch, and that's kind of why we watch football, right? I want to see people bring different ideas. So I feel like I've maybe gone a little bit too harsh on him being a bit fiery sometimes. He would be very fun to see in games that are deciding the title, that are deciding top 4. And I'm sure he'll get there one day, whether it's Liverpool, who knows.
Yeah, it would be fascinating to see. I mean, they are out of Europe now. That Roma knocked them out, didn't they, just before the international break. They're still in the mix to make European football next season. They probably are where they are in the table, Brighton, which is sort of fair and accurate, I would say. They have still got to play Arsenal, Chelsea, Man City, Villa, Man United and Newcastle, so they're going to have quite a big say in what the top of the table looks like. But I look at them and kind of, I don't know whether there's more are they underachieving compared to where they were last year, or are they kind of more like where they should be now?
Well, just quickly, they've not won 2 games in a row since September.
And now they're out of Europe, that might be helpful, I suppose.
Yeah.
There was a lot of he's been rotating, isn't he?
He's made 108 changes to his starting 11 this season, which is more than any other team. Averages at 3.9 changes per game. And the next highest amount of changes is 78 at Liverpool, which I think is 2.8 per game.
The 0.9 is Billy Gilmore.
Yeah. But yeah, so it's a relentless amount of changes. But yeah, it's just intriguing because I think I'm not saying Brighton have had a bad season, but I think we do still talk about them with a little bit of awe and a little bit of respect, whereas actually their results haven't been that great this season.
They've had to change things up this season in terms of their build-up. So obviously their build-up was famous last season because teams were responding to the way that they were building up by changing their pressing structures, which basically never happened. So it's the biggest sort of accolade you can give to someone's build-up is that if teams come and they change to play the way that you're playing against. Change the way they're playing against you. But what we've seen this season is that for various reasons, they're a little bit more flimsy defensively. They've lost Moises Caicedo and Alexis McAllister. And they were getting overrun a little bit more. Teams, I think, were prepared for their build-up structures this time around. And so they've had to change their build-up a little bit. And I think that it is now a little bit less penetrative than it was last season. So the combination of all of those things just means that, and this is what you have to do in the Premier League, it's like an unforgiving league. You have to constantly evolve. So I think what's happened this season is they've evolved, and it's just not quite as different, but as also functional and effective as it was last season.
But they're 8th in the table at the moment, aren't they? So it actually, when teams have had a second go at it maybe and other teams have found them out, there's been a drastic drop-off, and actually to still be 8th when you've got all that going on and the evolution of the team, it's actually a really good achievement. I've completely flipped it.
You've just said that they've got all of the big teams to play.
Yeah.
On paper, that might look daunting for them, but equally, as we've said, it's teams like Liverpool who are the perfect opponents because they are going to say, we're not going to change our play style, we are going to step up and engage with your build-up, and so it will leave in space behind for them to attack. So it could easily work in their favour that way.
And that's not just to mention as well, of course, what Jay's referred to, a lot of them not being able to build up or grow from what they've been before, mainly because they've had McAllister and Caicedo taken away, but then obviously they've gone long periods without Enciso and Solly March and Danny Welbeck and Ansu Fati as well. Injuries have just depleted them as well. So. Yeah.
It's very true. I mean, we did speak a lot about Arsenal and Manchester City, of course, but Liverpool are very much in this title shake-up too, Nnamdi. And I mean, they are a team that have the hunger because they haven't won it, but they have also got a bit of experience because they have won it recently. So where do they sort of rank in your title threat?
Oh, I'm not scared of them at all. No, they're
coming in hot in this podcast.
No, they're of course, yeah, they're thereabouts, and they will be, and they should be, and they just continue to defy the odds, and yeah, they'll be there in May.
Something went through my mind earlier. Chelsea announced, I think it was yesterday, that Romeo Lavia is going to miss the rest of the season. He's only made 1 Premier League appearance, which has a substitute. You think those sliding doors moments that if Liverpool win the title, missing out on Lavia and ending up getting Wataru Endo instead might actually have been a bit of a blessing in disguise. And of course, Lavia's got a really high ceiling and he'll be a really important player for Chelsea in years to come. But for this season right now, that might actually have worked in their favour, missing out on him.
Caicedo as well.
You're tapping into a theory I've had in the back of my mind all season, which is that in the summer, we were saying, poor Liverpool, they are absolutely getting pillaged for all their midfielders by Saudi Arabian Pro League. And like Jordan Henderson would still be there now. And the amount that they then had to evolve through that and the money they got worked out in the end, quite possibly. Score predictions then. Nnamdi, I'm going to come to you first. What do you reckon?
Liverpool will win, and they'll win comfortably. I say 3-0 Liverpool.
3-0 Liverpool. No trouble this time around, John. What do you think?
Yeah, I'll go 2-0 Liverpool, I think. Despite what I've just said.
Exactly, yeah, just hanging out, Zerbi to dry.
I was going to go 2-0 Liverpool as well.
Which is Jay knows ball, you see.
Well, there we go. No trouble, Liverpool. Right, time for our third stop off then. It's Brentford hosting Manchester United. Now, Jay, it was this fixture last season. Brentford scored 4 goals inside 35 minutes.
Yeah, it's probably one of my most favourite games that I've ever covered. It was the second weekend of the 22-23 season. Ten Hag's second game in charge. Man United had lost to Brighton on the opening weekend, and I just felt like Man United are going to respond. It was going to be like I'm not saying they're going to thrash Brentford, but they're going to come out strong. And it was just this baking hot summer's day. I think it was a 5:30 p.m. kickoff, and just life was beautiful. Basically, it was incredible to watch, and it was all of the best pieces of Brentford and all of the worst pieces of Manchester United. But then Brentford are a completely different team now from that day, mainly because of injuries. They've been robbed of a lot of the players that would have started that game. Obviously, David Raya at Arsenal, but Rico Henry's out injured. Aaron Hickey's not available. Ben Mee's out injured. Ethan Pinnock's out injured. I think it's touch and go if Christian Norgard will play. So normally I'd give Brentford quite high chances of getting points off Manchester United. They lost to them earlier in the season, but if you remember, there were two McTominay. I still don't know how it happened, but they're just in such a strange and bad run of form at the moment that it's going to be a difficult game for them.
Ethan Pinnock is a brilliant player. I think he's really underrated. Well, in my perception,
No,
maybe
he
everyone rates
is.
him, and I'm just chiming in. Bryan Mbeumo is back,
Yeah.
and that, I mean, they haven't half missed him. My fantasy league team has certainly missed him.
Yeah, massive. I think Mbeumo was one of the best players or most informed players in the league before he got injured. I think he had 7 goals and 4 assists in 15 games before he rolled his ankle against Brighton in December and made his comeback off the bench against Burnley in a game that we don't want to talk about. But it was the first time Ivan Toney and Bryan Mbeumo have been on the pitch together since May last year. So obviously Brentford have had to cope for different reasons without 2 of their best players together for a long period of time. So that is the thing that I think will give Brentford fans faith that they're going to get out of this sticky situation that they're in, because they've got arguably 2 of the best players in the bottom half of the league now starting games together. And so I think they'll probably pull out of the tricky situation that they're in. But it's Man United, then it's Brighton, and then it's Aston Villa. So the next 3 games are not the easiest.
Pretty sure United have improved since they were last at Brentford. United have got to win to still be in the Champions League race. And my first thought was like, nah, they're not though, are they? They're surely not. But then you look at the table and 6 points to Spurs. I mean, I don't know if we want to hang our hat on the fact that Spurs will definitely finish 5th. I don't know. But, I guess they could still do it. They have enough about them, United? Do they? I'm very high at the end there. I'm not sure.
I mean, they could. United are such a difficult team to analyse and put your bets on. I mean, you just don't really know what team's going to come up at a certain time, and it could be a Liverpool type FA Cup performance you can have, or you could have another capitulation. So you're not really sure. But I mean, 11 points off Villa and 6 points off Spurs obviously as well, and they've still got Arsenal, Liverpool, Chelsea, and Brighton to play as well. So they really can't afford another defeat.
Anyone want to predict what's going to happen in this one? Jay, should you want to go?
I think Man United will win 2-1. I think if Brentford had their full strength 11, I think they'd win. But Sergio Reguilon can't play because he got sent off against Burnley, which means I don't know who's going to play left back. There's too many holes in Brentford's team, I think, to get away with this one.
John?
I'm going to do 2-1 as well.
Excellent.
Why change a winning formula?
Nnamdi?
I think Brentford will get McTominay again, and I think it'll be 1-0 to Man United.
Oosh. And then we can see how Thomas Frank reacts to that potential release. Bit fried.
Yeah. I think certainly in the 3 seasons that I've covered the club, he seems like he's at his most tense. After the Burnley loss, there were a lot of one-word answers in his press conference. But you understand it, because with the injury situation, things are taken out of your hand completely. You're just, putting, square pegs in round holes. So I do feel for him. But I mean, he made a comment after the Burnley game that a foul on Zanka was a murder in the box. I just think it's not exactly the wisest terminology to use. And I think even saying something like that shows that he is feeling the pressure. But obviously he's massively backed by the senior figures at the club, and I'm sure he'll find a way through it.
Be a fun one to see how that goes, definitely, along with all the others, of course, and all the football. And is there anything else anyone wants to bring up from the weekend's football that they're looking forward to, they're going to keep an eye on? John, you're someone who watches all the football.
Yeah, I don't know. I feel very much still in international mode, so I've not done one of my favourite things, which is to sit down and look at all the games of the weekend and plot my way through the fixtures.
How long would you normally spend on that?
I usually do it like on a Saturday morning, but that
6 hours?
Friday nights have now become a thing, right? So I have to be a little bit more careful. But I usually wake up first thing, get on FOTMob, and I'm like, I could watch that, and then this, and then jump across to Spain for that one.
But you haven't done that yet.
I haven't done that yet, no. So sorry.
Well, it'll be a nice surprise for you come Friday night. Please let us all know. Nnamdi?
Keeping it Premier League anyway. I think Forest is actually a really interesting game to look at. I mean, since the last time we've seen them, they've been docked 4 points, and then obviously behind Luton in the relegation zone. They've announced that they will appeal decision, and they might have to sell players just to balance the book and stay afloat. So, and then of course now they've got 8 games to play, including Burnley, Sheffield United, and Everton. So I think it's a decent little relegation battle there.
Yeah, they seem to have been dealing with it quite well so far. Jay?
It's actually my best mate's wedding on Saturday, so I won't be at Brentford v Man United, and I don't know how much football I'm going to be able to watch.
You're going to the match of the weekend then, hey?
Right. Hey, there you go.
I've written down here Bayern Munich against Borussia Dortmund and Marseille against PSG. They are games that sound fantastic, but I probably won't have time to watch. But they are on
the
telly.
Bayern one's big, right? Because if they lose to Dortmund, then you're talking about like Leverkusen only need to win a couple more games, and they're probably there. So that's pretty big game. But I think Dortmund missing a few players, so I think that if Bayern can't win that, then they don't deserve to win the league. So.
But that is all for today. Thank you so much, guys. Thanks, John.
Oh, it's been great fun. Yeah,
lovely.
Thank you.
That's nice to hear. Thanks, Nnamdi.
Thanks.
Thank you, Jay.
My pleasure.
Absolutely brilliant. Ayo will be back on Monday. Adam will return for the preview next week as usual. That's on Friday. Until then, thanks for listening.